In the vast expanse of the internet, there are places that seem frozen in time, digital relics of a bygone era preserved like insects in amber. But few of these digital artifacts carry the weight, the cultural significance, or the ethical complexity of a simple website with a black background and neon text that has remained virtually unchanged since March 1997. This is the Heaven's Gate website, a digital time capsule that outlived its creators by decades. What makes this site remarkable isn't just its dated design or its bizarre content, it's that it exists at all. It is the intentional digital legacy of 39 people who chose to end their lives together in one of the most infamous mass suicides in modern history. For years, this corner of the web was little more than a macabre curiosity. But in the age of digital archaeology and preservation, the Heaven's Gate website has transformed into something else, a living laboratory for questions about digital ethics, preservation, and the afterlife of information. Its server space is now some of the most analyzed in the world, with every line of code and forum post captured, archived, and debated. Welcome back to Vanishing Threads. Today, we're opening the digital files of Heaven's Gate. We'll explore the history, the beliefs, and the single decision that ensured this cult would have an online presence long after its members departed. But then, we'll go deeper, to ask a more critical question. How did a doomed cult become one of the internet's most enduring digital artifacts? And what do the countless gigabytes of preserved content really tell us about digital immortality? To understand the Heaven's Gate digital legacy, you have to go back to its beginning. The group was founded in the early 1970s by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who met in 1972 while Applewhite was exploring alternatives to traditional Christianity after his mental health crisis. The connection was made through a shared interest in theosophy, with Nettles being a nurse interested in biblical prophecy. Together, they developed a belief system that combined elements of Christianity, UFO mythology, and science fiction. Applewhite and Nettles, who called themselves Do and Ty, believed they were extraterrestrial beings inhabiting human bodies. Their mission was to teach others how to evolve beyond their human state and ascend to what they called the next level, a physical, extraterrestrial kingdom above human existence. This wasn't a metaphorical heaven. In their belief system, it was a literal place that could be reached through a precise process of shedding human attachments. For decades, the group lived nomadically, recruiting members across the United States. They practiced extreme asceticism, including celibacy and the rejection of individual identity. Members adopted androgynous appearances with identical short haircuts and loose-fitting clothes designed to obscure gender differences. They lived communally, sharing resources and following a strict code of conduct that Applewhite called the 17 Steps. By the mid-1990s, the group had settled in a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. They had also found a new way to fund their operations and spread their message: web design. Under the business name Higher Source, Heaven's Gate members offered professional web development services. They created sites for small businesses in the San Diego area, building a modest but steady income stream. This wasn't just a practical decision, it was ideologically consistent. The internet, this new frontier of human communication, seemed to them like a stepping stone to the greater cosmic communication they sought. And then, in late 1996, they spotted what they interpreted as a sign. Comet Hale-Bopp was approaching Earth, and rumors circulated online that a spacecraft was trailing behind it. To Applewhite, this was the signal they had been waiting for. He convinced his followers that the time had come to shed their human containers and board the spacecraft that would take them to the next level. On March 26, 1997, police discovered the bodies of 39 Heaven's Gate members in their Rancho Santa Fe mansion. They had methodically taken their own lives over several days, ingesting therapeutic medication mixed with applesauce and alcohol, then covering their heads with plastic bags. They were dressed identically in black shirts and pants, Nike Decades trainers, and armbands reading Heaven's Gate, Away Team. Each had a £5 note in their pocket, cosmic toll money for their journey. But the story didn't end there. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. Before the suicides, Applewhite had made arrangements for the group's digital presence to continue. Two members, known as Mark and Sarah King, had been instructed to stay behind. Their mission: maintain the Heaven's Gate website and respond to inquiries about the group's beliefs. They had been members for 12 years, but were not present during the suicides. They became the digital caretakers of a dead cult. The website they maintained, heavensgate.com, remains online to this day, virtually unchanged since 1997. It's a perfect time capsule of early web design: black background, neon text, basic HTML, and frames. The site contains the group's beliefs, statements from members, and even a warning against suicide. The group maintained that their action was not suicide but a transition, and that it was not appropriate for others to follow their example without proper preparation. But the preservation goes beyond just maintaining a website. The Kings also preserved the group's forums, email exchanges, and internal documents. This wasn't accidental or incidental. It was a deliberate act of digital preservation, carried out by people who believed they were safeguarding important cosmic knowledge for future generations. This is where our story intersects with the broader history of the internet. In 1997, the web was still young. Most people didn't consider the long-term preservation of digital content. Websites came and went, forums were created and abandoned, email exchanges were lost to server migrations and account deletions. The idea of digital preservation was in its infancy. Yet here was this cult, planning not just for their physical death, but for their digital afterlife. They understood something that many others would only realize years later. The internet could preserve information indefinitely, creating a kind of immortality through data. The Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, which began capturing websites in 1996, has preserved snapshots of the Heaven's Gate site throughout the years. These captures show something remarkable. While the rest of the web evolved dramatically, this site remained frozen in time. It's as if the cult members knew that their message would be most powerful if it remained exactly as they left it, a digital monument to their beliefs. But preservation isn't just about keeping something intact, it's also about context and interpretation. As the years passed, the Heaven's Gate website became more than just a curiosity. It became a case study in digital ethics and preservation. Researchers began to study the site not just for its content, but for what it represented, a complete digital record of a group that no longer existed physically. The forums in particular offered unprecedented insight into the group dynamics, belief formation, and decision-making processes of a cult. Conversations that would have been lost to history in previous eras were now preserved in their entirety, searchable and analyzable. Digital anthropologists found in these forums a treasure trove of data. They could trace how Applewhite's charismatic leadership manifested in text. They could see how members reinforced each other's beliefs, how doubts were addressed, and how the group's ideology evolved over time. The Heaven's Gate forums became a kind of digital Pompeii, a community frozen at the moment of its destruction, with all its structures intact. But this preservation raises profound ethical questions. Should the digital remains of a cult be preserved? Are we respecting or exploiting the dead by studying their online communications? Who owns these digital artifacts, the deceased, their families, the caretakers, or the public? These questions become even more complex when we consider that the Heaven's Gate website isn't just an archive, it's still active. The Kings continue to respond to emails sent to the site. They maintain the server, pay the hosting fees, and ensure that the message remains available. In interviews, they've stated that they do this because they believe in the importance of the information, even though they chose not to join their fellow members in the afterlife. This ongoing maintenance creates a unique situation in digital preservation. Most preserved websites are static archives, maintained by institutions or individuals with no connection to the original creators. But the Heaven's Gate site is a living artifact maintained by believers. It's not just preservation, it's continuation. This continuation has sparked debates among digital ethicists. Some argue that the site should be shut down, as it could potentially influence vulnerable individuals. Others contend that it has historical and research value that justifies its continued existence. Still others point out that censoring the site would set a dangerous precedent for digital preservation efforts. The debate extends to other platforms as well. Reddit hosts a subreddit dedicated to discussing Heaven's Gate, where former members occasionally post. YouTube contains uploads of the group's recruitment videos and exit statements. These platforms must balance free speech, historical preservation, and potential harm in their moderation decisions. What makes the Heaven's Gate digital presence particularly significant is that it was intentional. Unlike many digital legacies, which are cobbled together from whatever content happens to survive, the Heaven's Gate online presence was carefully planned. The members knew they were creating a digital afterlife, and they designed it with purpose. This intentionality raises questions about our own digital legacies. Most of us will leave behind vast amounts of data when we die. Social media posts, emails, photos, videos, forum comments, and more. But few of us plan for how this data will be preserved or presented. Our digital afterlives will be largely accidental, shaped by platform policies and the decisions of those who survive us. The Heaven's Gate website stands as a stark contrast to this haphazard approach. It shows what happens when a group treats their digital presence not as ephemeral, but as eternal, when they design not just for the present, but for a future in which they no longer exist physically. As digital preservation efforts become more sophisticated, we're likely to see more attention paid to these questions. The Internet Archive now preserves billions of web pages. Museums are developing protocols for collecting and displaying digital artifacts. Researchers are creating methodologies for studying online communities that no longer exist. In this emerging field, the Heaven's Gate website serves as both a case study and a warning. It demonstrates the power of digital preservation to extend the influence of ideas beyond the physical lives of their creators. It shows how the internet can create a kind of immortality, not the cosmic transcendence that the cult members sought, but a persistence of information that previous generations could only dream of. The ethical questions surrounding this preservation are not easily resolved. There are no simple answers to whether such content should be maintained, who should control it, or how it should be contextualized. These are questions we will continue to grapple with as more and more of our lives and deaths play out online. What is clear is that the Heaven's Gate website represents something profound about the internet age. The line between life and death is no longer as clear as it once was. Our words, images, and ideas can outlive us, continuing to influence others long after we're gone. The members of Heaven's Gate may have believed they were leaving Earth for a spacecraft, but part of them never left at all. They remain here, in the digital realm, their words still readable, their beliefs still accessible, their presence still felt. In the end, perhaps that's the most important lesson of the Heaven's Gate digital legacy. In the age of the internet, nothing truly vanishes. The threads of our digital lives continue, woven into the vast tapestry of information that spans the globe. Whether we plan for it or not, pieces of us will remain online, accessible to future generations, our digital ghosts haunting the servers and archives of tomorrow. As we continue to build our own digital presences, we would do well to remember the Heaven's Gate website, not for its content, but for what it represents. The awesome and terrible power of the internet to preserve, to perpetuate, and to grant a kind of immortality that no previous generation could have imagined. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe.